Way more than 72 hours have passed since the terrible, absolute atrocious attacks in New Zealand. And a couple of folks have really asked me why I haven't put a video out on this one yet. And this one really made me sit and think long and hard and about, first of all, whether I was even going to make a video. But my XO Stephanie really kind of reminded me of why we do these. And so I want to talk about the big lessons learned and a path forward from here, and what we really are looking at and what we really should do about atrocities like this, so then we can take them seriously as good people and learn from them and make our world a better place. So I'm going to tell you why I struggled with this one. It's actually our first lesson, and that is we are now reaping what we've sown. The murderer, and if you go back to looking at, the 72-hour rule, the latest one that I put up, I won't name him, I will never talk about him. That's a lesson that we'll talk about. That he wanted to be famous. He wanted his manifesto read. He went live on Facebook for a reason, and that wasn't to showcase his depravity, but he said it was to cause a race war and to cause a civil war, specifically in the United States, that he was using a body count in order to get his message out there to start a civil war. He was specifically attempting to drive a wedge between us. And so I don't want to give into that. I don't want to give any credibility to that, and I don't want to play into that. I think the 24-hour news cycle has played into it completely. The number of people who have re-uploaded the video of him committing his atrocity absolutely did exactly what he wanted. People reading his manifesto and saying his name have done exactly what he wanted, and we are giving him the victory that he seeks. And not only are we giving him the victory that he seeks, we are actually grooming the next one as somebody on the fringe watches all of this notoriety and watches their message get out, that guy's message, then they go, aha, I will do the same and rack up a new high score. And so I thought about not saying anything because I don't want to give him anything. I don't want to play into that. However, I changed my mind, particularly because Stephanie, my XO, said that we've gotten several messages, and particularly from fans of the channel who are Muslims, who are worried, and I get it that people worry about motivations, that I won't say anything about this because the victims are Muslim. And nothing could be further from the truth. And that overrode my desire not to give that guy any kind of credibility at all. I haven't dubbed it. I got it from my friend Matt, who got it from somewhere else. Bad word coming, so plug your ears if you don't like bad words. But we call this the some asshole rule, that we will never speak his name. He will die in ignominy. You will never hear that person discussed by me. You'll never hear them named by me. And I think that that's the way that we should do things. And that said, I want to honor the fact that I'm a Christian, and I absolutely abhor what was done in the 2 mosques at Christ Church. I think that all good people should abhor it. And I think that religiously motivated violence is a particularly evil form of violence, and we need to stand against it, and we need to say no to this kind of atrocity. And I also will say it has made me so hurt inside to see on social media some people, particularly Americans, particularly right-leaning Americans, but far, far, far right-leaning Americans, who have tap danced on the grave of the people in these mosques because they are Muslims. And I think we should decry violence of any kind. No one has the right to take someone else's life. No one has the right to hurt someone, particularly in their place of worship. We should be better than that. Our places of worship, no matter which God we worship, our places of worship should be sanctuaries. They should be safe places. They should be places where we don't have to think about these things, because it is unthinkable to do that to somebody in their place of worship. And so, again, as a man who's a Jesus follower, a guy who pastored a church for almost 15 years, I absolutely abhor the fact that this violence was done to Muslims for their Muslim faith in order to spark a religious war, a race war, a civil war. And I think that our lesson learned from there has to be to stop polarizing over the issue of religion. And I think this stems in America from 9/11, that, extremists, of course, did an atrocity on our soil. And so some people took that, look, all Muslims did that. And we've had this big ongoing feud for now, 18 years almost over this. And I think instead what we have to do is reach across divides to get to know one another, to love one another. I think the answer here is not to go you, or not to go you stay away, or whatever. We're going to polarize to our ends, but to come together to love one another. And so I just strongly encourage you, in response to this tragedy, if you're a Christian, go get to know a Muslim. If you're a Muslim, go get to know a Jew. If you're a Jew, go get to know an agnostic. If you're an agnostic, show up and help at a local outreach of your local church. If you're an atheist, get to know one or more of all of the above, and not just on a superficial level, on a deep level, and know their humanity. I think that is really our biggest lesson. The next thing I think we have to do is we have to say we will not watch the footage. I will not watch his live stream. He wanted to be seen. We are giving him what he wants when we showcase it, when we say this is what we do. I think that this is playing right into his hands. In fact, I won't even watch it. I know what happened. I know enough of what happened from the news stories and from the confirmed reports. I don't need to watch it. I think that it is playing once again into his hands and giving him exactly what he wants when we give him notoriety and we allow him to dictate what we do. And I think we won't do it. So if you see it posted somewhere, ignore it. Don't watch it. Don't share it. Don't give him any notoriety whatsoever. On the other hand, I think we should absolutely recognize the many heroes. In particular, I want to talk about Abdul Aziz, who was in the Linwood Mosque in Christchurch and ran towards the sound of gunfire. He's not a sworn law enforcement officer, but he had his boys in that mosque, his children, I should say. I don't know if they were all boys, and ran out with like a credit card machine and distracted him, even picked up one of his firearms at one point, though it was empty, used it to bash in his window and drove him off. And I think that kind of courage, that kind of bravery needs to be absolutely celebrated. He undoubtedly saved lives. And so if I ever get to meet you, Mr. Aziz, I will shake your hand and say you are an absolute hero. And may we all, in our moment of need, model the heroism that you modeled. I think that's a huge lesson, to be brave, to protect the ones who are defenseless in our world. And that's something we can walk forward with. I am going to say that I think that the people of New Zealand are the real victims here, not just the victims in the mosque, who are, of course, ones who we should remember and we should mourn and we should grieve. But I'm deeply troubled by what I saw from the government of New Zealand, who, not only radically changed their firearms laws and basically said all semi-automatic firearms are illegal at this point in New Zealand, and even though they've only had, to the knowledge today, only 37 of them have been turned in, I have a feeling that's going to be a problematic thing. However, they do have full registration, and so they know who has them. I hate registrations. I want my government to be afraid of its people, to overreach. And so I don't think that's the right answer. I don't think that's going to help anything. I think that what you give up for that is more than what you gain for it, because a free people ought always have the ability to throw off a tyrannical government. And that means having a robust, unorganized militia that can gather at any moment. And that's what we have in the United States via the right to keep and bear arms. And so, yes, we worry about atrocities like happened there, but we also think about not just killings in the dozens, but killings in the millions, which is what happens when government has unchecked reach. And that's why our founding fathers ensconced the Second Amendment. So am I worried about that from New Zealand? Yes, but I got to be honest with you, I'm way more worried about them censoring speech. That the New Zealand government has jailed people for sharing this video, and that's okay in their world as well. That the people of New Zealand not only don't have a Second Amendment to protect the right to keep and bear arms, but they don't have a First Amendment, the right to free speech, the right to a free press, the right to free assembly. that the government's banning those things and charging people has actually even written American companies and American entrepreneurs who had this video on their servers and threatened them. And that to me showcases the egregious overreach of government. And I don't think the answer here is more government regulation. I think that we have to actually recognize that government does not solve many problems, but it creates many problems. And so this is also exactly what the gunman wanted. He wanted firearms taken away. He wanted there to be a tipping point, a blasting point of divide, so that way the war came. And I think we need to do everything we can to avoid that. This is why I am so grateful that the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms. Remember, the amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution itself does not give us any rights. It protects pre-existing rights. And I value my First Amendment rights even more than my second. I value the right to free worship and free speech, and that includes free speech on the internet. And I abhor the fact that the government of New Zealand can just by fiat change that and remove people's right to free speech and remove people's God-given right to defend themselves and their family. I also will say that you can go one or two ways on this one. You can say, oh, okay, well, the bad guy had a gun and therefore we should take the guns away from everyone. Or you can say, no, wait a minute, gosh, if people in their places of worship had the right, the ability to protect themselves, they very clearly could have, because you know what stopped that guy? A bunch of guys showing up with guns. The police response was there. I think there's another lesson there, that from the time the first call came in, what I'm seeing in the news stories now is that the police response time was 6 minutes from the first call. Not from when the atrocity started, but from when the first call came into emergency services. That's a very fast response time, and yet he murdered 50 people. The police can't save you, everyone. You are responsible for your own self-defense. And that includes at your place of worship, that includes at the mall, that includes in your home. And you have to raise your family to recognize they are the primary agents in their own rescue. And so I say, listen, I think that the better way to go is to actually liberalize concealed carry laws, to make folks understand that they can protect themselves and that they are not soft targets. Why did he pick those mosques? He knew he didn't have any resistance there. And why do so many of these atrocities happen where firearms are prohibited? Because only good people listen. And I know these are tired tropes, and we talk them through from time to time, and we trot them out when we want to talk about them. But sometimes they're true, friends. And we have to recognize that we can go either way on that. And I think the better way is, first of all, to allow good people to protect themselves. Second of all, I do think we need cultural change. And that cultural change, we say, oh, the culture needs to change. No, that means you and I need to change, okay? That means you and I need to be ready and willing to sit down and have meaningful dialogue. Now, I know as soon as I say that and they say, oh, they're taking our rights away and this and that. Well, maybe that's what somebody wants to do. But until we can sit down and understand someone's heart and find a place of meaningful dialogue and meaningful clash, we're not going to get anywhere. Until we recognize across both sides of this aisle in the debate in gun control that at our core we both want the same thing. And I think my friends who are pro-gun control and this idea of gun control, which really is confiscation and disarmament, they want a safe society. Well, I want safety in my society as well. And I think they want a free society too. I don't think many of my friends in the United States want a true nanny state. They can go live in one of those if they want to, but I don't think they really want to. I know I certainly don't want to, that I want safety for myself and for my family, but I want it not at the cost of liberty. I want to have a place where I am free to be who I want to be, a place where I am free to worship how I want, where I'm free from government intrusion on my speech, where I'm free from government intrusion on my press, where I have privileges and immunities, where I have the right to an attorney, where I have the right to a jury of my peers, rather than the government agent saying what is my fate. And that ordered libertarian republic is what I think that we really do want. And so we say, wait a minute, this is what we want, an ordered libertarian republic where we have liberty, and at the same time, then we have safety. So how do we have both liberty and safety? And then we work from that place of community and from that place of togetherness and from that place of a shared goal that we say, okay, I think that let's look for evidence-based ways that we can moving a path forward. And I think one of those for that, if you allow me to kind of spend a little more time with you, is number one, we have to look out for one another. And we have to recognize when those in our world are being radicalized, when they're being marginalized. And I think that we have to look out for each other when that happens. And when it does, we have to, as a community, come together and make sure that we minimize opportunities for this to happen to those people, for them to then act out on those marginalizations and act out on those violent impulses. And yes, somewhat, that means that we need to look, especially in the US, but worldwide, at mental health care and making sure that people are well taken care of, that they're not afraid of losing their rights when they go to get help for either suicidal or homicidal ideations. Of course, we got to recognize that the vast majority of people who do suffer from mental illness are no danger to themselves and no danger to others. And having mental illness, we need to destigmatize that people need help, that they need to see their therapist, they need to see their psychiatrist, and they need to not be worried that their God-given rights are going to be taken away from them in doing that. And that's going to take a complete revamping. And we have to find good solutions to that. And we have to find good ways to help those marginalized people not be radicalized into doing these atrocious acts in order to be seen and heard. And I don't think that's going to come overnight. And I think that the internet is making that harder, but I think we can do it. And so I just encourage you, reach out to the people that you know. And when you see somebody struggling, don't just kind of back off because you don't know what to say. Dig in there. Get to know someone who's not like you. And again, if you're a Second Amendment proponent, go and talk to somebody who is a far left-leaning person and say, hey, let's have coffee and I want to talk about that. Not to attack you, not to call you names, but to really talk. And to dig down to the core issues where we agree, and then from there find out where we might disagree, and do so in a way that leads to understanding and goodness and grace. The real problem here, friends, is that true lasting change is not going to be easy, and you can't just wave a magic wand. I don't think saying, oh, take the guns away is going to work. Certainly wouldn't work in the United States. There are too many. There is too much of history in the United States, and you'd have to have a constitutional convention and repeal the Second Amendment and then start to do those things, which you couldn't do. I would strongly encourage every single person who watches Active Self-Protection to have the attitude, skills, and plan to protect themselves and their family from fringe lunatics. I would strongly encourage you, don't watch the video, don't read the manifesto, don't give the guy anything that he wants. And when somebody starts talking about, well, New Zealand teaches us, wait, stop. Don't give the guy anything that he wants. Go love your family. Go hug them tight. Practice spiritual fitness. Go have a conversation and a dialogue with somebody. Fight hard for those on the margins. Make sure that our mental health system gets completely revamped so that people are avoiding marginalization, and help one another, everyone. I hope that helps. May God have mercy on us all.